Good evening. This is Lars Konga on the Why is Everyone Sick podcast with my friend and confidant today, Dr. Steve Porter. So, welcome to the podcast tonight. And we've got some interesting topics that we wanted to talk about tonight. Primarily, we're going to talk about the pharmaceutical industry, the poison food industry, and why has everybody gotten sick. And we're leading off tonight with a really interesting book that I've come across, and it's a sequel to a book that was written in the 1930s called 100 Million Guinea Pigs. And then they came out with a sequel in the 70s called 200 Million Guinea Pigs. So please be aware that the book and some of the facts and figures that I'm going to be reading from today have come out of the 1970s, and we are again 50 years later. And we all understand that the problem has continued to compound and exacerbate and become larger and larger. So why is everyone sick? This podcast today is on the pharmaceutical industry demedication principles, and it's an overview of the big systems today that are operating, that are selling us all of their products from the TV that we are all ingesting daily. And it's a macro level thought exercise on why is everyone sick. So I'm going to start off reading from this book that I found in a classic bookstore in my hometown. And it's been a scary thing to read, and it's been an enlightening thing to read at the same time, because I hope the takeaway from this podcast that Steve and I are putting out, I hope the takeaway is just to obtain kind of a macro system level thinking of what's happening today, because a lot of the problems we have, we think that they're just our own problem, but you know what? They're happening to our children, they're happening to our aunts and our uncles and our wives and our bosses. And they're literally happening to the majority of people. There are very few people who are living unaffected by these modern medicine and food and poison systems today. So let's get into it. In 1933, the book 100 Million Guinea Pigs by Arthur Callatt and F.J. Schlink shocked and awakened the country to the dangers in everyday foods, drugs, and cosmetics. The book took a cold, angry look at the hazards and inadequacies of such things as prescription drugs, toothpastes, mouthwashes, cereals, germicides, meats, food additives, lead poisoning, cosmetics, aspirin, hair dyes, cold remedies, over-the-counter drugs, alleged medical devices, wild and irresponsible advertising claims, and the lack of enforcement of protective regulations by government agencies. At about the same time, the Food and Drug Administration made it known that the original hoary Food and Drug Act of 1906, as advanced as it was for its day, needed major surgery to bring it up to date. With 100 million guinea pigs, excuse me, with 100 million guinea pigs awakening the indifferent and inattentive consumer of the 30s, a long battle shaped up in Congress for more sensible legislation to protect the public from glaring abuses imposed on it by manufacturers. Characteristically, many large pharmaceutical and grocery corporations fought the proposed consumer legislation with every mortar and pestle and meat cleaver at their command. 100 million guinea pigs sparked a rising wave of consumer indignation. It played an important role in the eventual passage of the 1938 Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. But if there is anything that history shows us about consumerism, It is that it takes a major catastrophe to carry legal and enforcement action over the hump of lethargy and resistance. The 1938 law sprang from the fumes of the tall, dark bottles labeled elixir sulfanilamide. A chemist of the SE Messengill Company managed to mix a pharmaceutical cocktail with deadly ethylene glycol. No testing for safety of new drugs was required then, and over 100 innocent people promptly died. As a result, the new legislation was swept in over few objections. And these came, of course, from certain pharmaceutical, cosmetic, and grocery houses. If the Sulfa tragedy completed the attack against lethargy, Callatt and Schlink's book softened the ground for it. But there was no way for the authors to predict at that time what the future held in store for food, drugs, and cosmetics. To say nothing of health devices, general household hazards, lethal toys, and environmental dangers affecting everything and everyone. Today, nearly 40 years later, and case in point, this book is written in the 70s, so we are now 90 years after what they're talking about right now. So quickly we can see how these industries have metastasized along greed, rampant greed. Time bombs are ticking today in several dark corners. Warnings of experts have been and are going unheeded. A small group of dedicated people in government service, in Congress, in consumer groups, as well as some independent citizens, are attempting to combat the abuses imposed by those in industry, who glaringly put profit ahead of social welfare at the expense of the consumer, and in some cases, at his mortal peril. It is 1933 all over again, multiplied by logarithms, and now in the year 2025, exponentially multiplied again by algorithms. The difference is only a matter of form. This is not a book on the broad expanse of the new consumer movement. This is a book about consumer danger. Pricing and quality of goods and services are important, but they are secondary. As one FDA official Riley commented, "I've been cheated and I've been poisoned, and believe me, cheated is better." The life or death of the consumer comes first. The consumer population is no longer 100 million. There are twice that number, 200 million guinea pigs today. Far too many to be caged, tagged, fed, and drugged for the sake of exploitive profit. Again, that was written in 1972, and that intro is going to preface our talk today. Today, we're trying to establish where we are at with modern medicines and foods. How did we get here, and where are we going to go? So I wanted to bring up now some of the modern statistics, and we're kind of looking at a long time horizon view of the United States. An interesting stat that I read today off of X from the Make America Healthy Again movement. The US consumes about 75% of pharmaceuticals today and has about 4.5% of the overall world's population. So quite confounding facts when you start looking at it. So now we're going to get into some of the different categories of drugs and medicines and foods and the hidden dangers in them. ADRs are responsible for 100,000 deaths annually, and they are among the top 4 to 6 causes of death in the US. In 2023, the FDA received over 1.2 million adverse event reports, with over 10% classified as serious. Between 2007 and 2019, the FDA identified nearly 1,000 dietary supplements masquerading as supplements but containing unapproved pharmaceutical compounds, including prescription drugs. 20% of prescription drugs in the US have been found to have inconsistent active ingredient levels. Wow, that's kind of Steve, we know from the work we do with Parkinson's disease how popular supplementation is, right? Are you taking
Exactly.
supplements today?
Very rarely. And if I ever try a supplement, I single it out. I don't mix it with any other supplement, and I give it a day or two, and I don't give it much time, honestly. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, there's promise out there for certain things like vitamin B1, which I've tried and come to find out it's very difficult to dose or even try to dose how much is an effective dose for controlling Parkinson's symptoms. You can take too much and actually make things worse. And then your body's natural dependence on any supplement um, sort of
changes.
changes. Yeah, and it lends to the fact that you probably are taking will end up taking too much of any supplement. I mean,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I
it's kind of
won't.
like that old adage, like you know, we wake up in the morning, but we're not the same human being by the afternoon. So we
Yeah,
kind of we dose these things with one idea at one point in time, not understanding that our body changes every time we dose it. So these things can quickly stack up in our system.
yeah.
Next thing we're going to talk about is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Now, these are going to be things like acetaminophen and aspirins and whatnot. Chronic use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs can paradoxically increase system chronic inflammation by disrupting gut microbiota, leading to a 30% higher risk of chronic inflammatory diseases like arthritis. That one really hit me because I mentioned this story on another episode that I had had a kidney shutdown. And when I was in the hospital from it, the doctor mentioned to me that he regularly sees people who've taken an aspirin or some acetaminophen. And what is the result from that one unlucky dose? A lifetime of dialysis. And when he told me that in the hospital, I was completely blown away. So the other one a lot of people today are really into is dietary supplements. I know the semi-glutides now are super popular. Every night when we watch the hockey playoffs, they're having two or three semi-glutide commercials on, and they're quite powerful because they're showing a regular guy, a regular woman who's overweight, and they're just saying, "Hey, you don't have to feel like that. Take a pill." Right. So it's like the face of you can see it. It's like you can see how dangerous that can be
Yeah.
because they're not telling you that this could potentially result in some terrible health consequences down the road. So,
Yeah. Hey, and
they're,
even when they do tell you all the possible terrible side effects and results of some of these drugs, the power of the effect that it has and
yeah,
making you skinny or whatever, over you don't even listen. Most people don't even listen to, that you may die from this.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, they
yeah.
really strike at the heart of our risk reward systems
Yeah.
and how fallible we are and how we all want to feel better. But yeah, we get into murky water quickly, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Dietary supplements and the hidden dangers, adulteration and contamination. 23,000 emergency department visits annually, with 40% involving severe outcomes like hospitalization or death. Common culprits include weight loss, sexual enhancement, and energy supplements that are adulterated with pharmaceuticals. So, again, people are taking these things, not understanding that they're coming out of wholesale vats in China that are cross contaminated with multiple multiple medicines, right? Not understanding how the supply chain of all of these things, how they get them to us and how they manufacture them, creates inherent risk within it. Another interesting one I was reading about: heavy metal contamination. 30% of tested dietary supplements in the US contain trace levels of heavy metals like lead, cadmium, or arsenic, which can accumulate in the body and trigger chronic inflammation or organ damage. So the heavy metal one, I've ran into that with the Parkinson's community. One of my clients had a test done and realized I think he was heavy in lead or mercury. So he went under a process called chelation.
Yeah.
You know about that
I've
one?
done that. Yeah,
You've
I've
done
done
that one.
that.
What's that
Yeah.
like?
Um, well, you take a beginning sample to get your levels, and if your levels are high, and I think mercury or lead or any heavy metal, you take a heavy dose of chelating drug, um, and you take it for a while. It makes you sick. It makes your pee turn bright yellow, if I remember right.
Wow, I
It's
did
been a
not know
while
that.
since I've done it, but
Yeah,
you go through just the drug that basically leaches it out of your body,
yeah,
um, and then um, drink a ton of water when you're
yeah,
doing it. It makes you feel kind of sick, if I remember. It's been a long time. It's been over 15 years since I've done it, so
yeah.
um,
Have
I'll
you
have
had
to
your
go back.
heavy metals tested recently?
I haven't. I'm due. I'm due to have everything tested, and I just have gotten so busy with all this Parkinson stuff and returning back to work that I've really haven't found a day to do it. But that's on my to-do list. I have a feeling it's going to be okay. Okay.
Yeah, you're.
I,
I can. I feel like I can see sickness in people today, and like well, I'll leave that for another episode. But you're looking healthy to
yeah,
me, sir.
I'm
Supplements
feeling it.
and inflammation. Excessive intake of certain supplements like vitamin A can reach toxic levels, increasing inflammation, raising risk of liver damage by 20%. This is a startling stat that I had read. There are 80 to 90,000 supplement products available in the US. The FDA has resources to inspect only 1 or 2% of manufacturers annually. And that one really stuck me because um, in Vancouver, when I was in the CrossFit and nutrition crowds, I ran across a few very entrepreneurial guys who would start up vitamin and supplement companies, right? Because there's quite a low barrier to entry. And I knew these guys because we would, be part of the same community. And I just remember I had a joke with a guy I used to train with, and he was a guy who introduced me to the concept of baseline, and baseline being nothing except protein and fat in your system for as long as periods as you can. He was an anti supplement guy. And at the time, I was kind of a pro supplement guy. And we were at a party, and there was these two new supplement entrepreneurs who were at this party. And we were sitting there watching the party, and we looked over at these guys, and they were pounding tequila shots, and they were going in the bathroom to rip lines of blow. And he looked at me and he said, "Those are the guys entrusted to get you extra healthy with supplements." It's like they're in it for greed, right? It was fairly obvious when you saw who was behind it. So yeah, 80 to 90,000 supplement products, and they're motivated by money. They're not motivated to help you. High doses of omega-3 supplements can thin blood excessively, leading to internal bleeding and inflammation in 5 to 10% of users. So as I read through these stats, you start to see that there's a lot of products on the market and a lot of people taking them. And I don't think we hear enough that a certain amount of people are getting very sick from them. And that's a little bit of a clue into the fact that if some of us are getting very sick, maybe all of us are getting a little bit sick, maybe just getting some chronic inflammation in the system that we're not truly recognizing, right? So it's interesting stuff to kind of take a 30,000 foot view of and check out your own cupboards and maybe count up how many different dietary supplements you've accumulated over the years, right?
Oh yeah, there's a time in my life when I had two handfuls of supplements, everything. I mean, it was like, why leave something out, you know?
Yeah, I've been
And I
there.
was heavily into the omega-3 and fish oil
Yeah.
supplement, vitamin D, which, you know, you need to get from the sun. We can talk about that later too, but vitamin D, you know, and A, D, E, and K, the oil soluble, fat soluble vitamins are so easily overdosed.
Yeah.
I didn't have the knowledge or think about all that when I was taking the supplements. Um,
Yeah.
and I did this for
Nor did
many
I when I
years.
was taking
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just seemed like an easy answer to get a little bit healthier.
Yeah. Even something as innocuous as
Innocuous.
vitamin C.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
but vitamin C is an interesting one because I remember as a kid, uh, we would wake up in the morning and I would have Rice Krispies or Cheerios, and I would pump it full of tabletop sugar and milk, and I would eat that, and I would grab a couple of vitamin C's, eat them, and I'd run and jump on the bus. And I remember, like, I still remember this as a kid, like peeing out just like a fluorescent yellow
yeah.
color of urine. And
Yeah.
as a kid, I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm healthy.
Yeah.
No, right? That was like a health
Yeah.
feedback loop at the time for me. But now I think back on that and I'm like, yeah, I peed out yellow, but what stayed in my cells and what inflamed my cells? Because I actually lived on that routine from about 9 years old, right up until probably my mid 20s when I started to take a deeper look at health. I loved cereal, right? Like a lot of us kids in the
Yeah.
90s, I grew up on cereal, right?
Oh, I grew up on Cheerios. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, me
I
too.
mean,
I
yeah.
still
The
look
the
at a
healthy,
box of
the most healthy cereal out there, right?
which one is it, honey nut or apple cinnamon?
Oh yeah. Well, the plain ones are supposed to be the heart healthy ones,
Oh
but
yeah,
um,
heart
but yeah,
healthy, right?
but yeah, the others taste better. So the honey
Yeah,
nut by far. Oh
yeah.
yeah. It
And
makes
then
the milk taste good.
I remember going to other kids' houses and they would have like Fruit Loops and stuff, and
Oh yeah.
I'd look down on them. I'm like,
Oh
what kind of
yeah.
people eat Fruit Loops? Like, because I thought I was eating the healthy cereal, right?
Yeah,
But
but
I was
knowing you would love to eat some Fruit Loops. I mean, my
but I was
gosh.
dumping sugar on my cereal, so I had
Yeah.
just as much sugar as the Fruit Loops. It's like, it's so funny how it's so funny how easily these things get into our house, into our systems, and how they can, you know, they can almost make us feel proud about our health to some degree. And looking back on it, it took a lot of, it's just pure ignorance. It's more than ignorance because these things are sold to us at a system wide, cultural wide level. So it's like you can't really blame people for falling victim to them because to some degree, that's what's offered. And,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Oh, today I worked out of town and I had to stop and get gas at a convenience store on the way home and it went in to use the restroom for a sec and I just looked down every aisle and all I could see was poison. It was like it could may as well have been ant poison, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like I can't eat anything. There's nothing in
There's,
here. And
there's
and
nothing.
and and it
There's
all
nothing.
tastes really good. I mean, there's not a thing that doesn't just
Yeah.
go straight to your satiety or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you crave. It's all drugs and it's all poison. And
Isn't that the truth? It's
yeah,
all just before you said that, I was like, it's drugs, and that's true. The food, and these are the biggest food companies in the world with multi-billion-dollar advertising budgets, and they're pumping this advertising into our kids while they sit on YouTube. But you know, because it's so pervasive and everywhere, and it's been normalized and accepted, when at a certain point in my health journey, when you look at it, it definitely raises a weird emotion in you, because it's like this onslaught of poisons into us that's accepted by everybody. So it's kind of wild. But let's not stop there, because it kind of, I hate I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It kind of gets worse as we go through some of this stuff.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, so let's
And
just keep diving into it. So, toxic foods and chronic cellular inflammation. 60% of the average American diet consists of ultra processed foods with high fructose corn syrup, seed oils, and a host of man made ingredients. Stacked up over time, decades, these lead to massive increases in chronic inflammatory diseases like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases. So that's where we're at. But let's not stop there. We've got to get through this one. It gets worse again, because as we talk about this stuff, you got to start kind of visualizing the different systems that are at play, because like Cheerios are not antidepressant pharmaceuticals, right? And antidepressant medications are not pesticides. And there's many layers to the severity of the problem we face. And if you can look at it as a big macro system, just try to visualize all of these layers. So here's some more startling stats we're going to kick out here. This one really hurt me. Over 1 billion pounds of synthetic pesticides are used annually in US crops, with residues detected in 70% of non-organic produce. These chemicals are linked to inflammation-driven conditions like Alzheimer's, cancers, and neurodegenerative diseases like ALS, PD, and a host of others. Glyphosate, a common pesticide, is found in 80% of US urine samples and increases inflammation by disrupting gut microbiota, raising the risk of autoimmune diseases by 15%. So that number, 1 billion pounds of synthetic pesticides annually, right? 1 billion pounds. That one, it's because 1 billion pounds spread over all of the agricultural lands means there's literally nowhere to hide, unless you're going to move to an off-grid cabin 500 miles from the nearest farmland. There's nowhere to hide, folks. And this is an annual number, right? So these things they're being trucked, they're being distributed throughout the country, and they're being sprayed every year.
And science has already proven that it's a bad thing. That's just one thing I mean, science has gotten onto
Yeah.
glyphosate. I mean, we
Yeah,
already know. We already know.
we're not even really arguing that they're poison at this point.
No, we're not.
But
And
it's so ingrained in our system that it's anybody's best guess what we're going to do with this, right? So yeah, I think on some level society is just accepting the sickness at this point. And
well, there's so many. I mean, you said thousands. There's so many things to pick apart.
yeah,
Where do you start? Where do you start? And you have to look at it, the big picture. There
yeah.
may be one thing out there that's not harmful, but I mean, how do you
Well,
find that?
you're right. And
Yeah.
because that stat said in non-organic foods. Now, I'm a farm boy. I grew up in a farming valley in Canada, and our neighbors are organic farmers, but their neighbors are not.
Yeah.
So you have like one field over, they're using fertilizers and glyphosates, and on a windy day, it's like, you know, it's Yeah, organic is
Yeah.
better.
And
Organic
water
is better.
runs. Water runs.
Water runs, sir. Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Heavy metals in foods. Mercury in seafood exceeds levels in 10% of samples, major contributor to neuroinflammation and cognitive decline. Cadmium in leafy greens and grains can accumulate, causing kidney inflammation and increasing cancer risk by 5 to 10% in high exposure populations. And then the common thread in all of this, chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is a key driver of 70% of all chronic disease today. So we've kind of gone through now, we looked at a little bit of the history through the book 200 Million Guinea Pigs. And I wonder if they're going to put out somebody should put out a new book today, although the authors might be dead from poisoning at this point. But somebody should be putting out a new book now called 400 Million Guinea Pigs in the year 2025. And that's what I've been thinking about lately, because there's another component to this mass scale poisoning that is happening daily that we haven't talked about, and that one is vaccines.
Vaccines. Yeah.
Vaccines. So,
Yeah.
I got to preface the vaccine conversation. I had a friend from high school, and she grew up on an organic farm, and we were always friends. And she was an anti-vaxxer, and I'm talking to her in like the year we stayed in touch after high school, and I remember in the year like about right around 2018 or 2019. Do you remember when Jim Carrey and his Playboy girlfriend were on Larry King show? And there was a famous clip where they were like, it's the vaccines, right? And these memes would go around, and I was the guy who I was like, man, these people, these anti-vaxxers are crazy, right? So
Right.
me in the year 2018, 2019, I was like, what are they talking about? And I have 4 children, and my older 2 kids, we got their recommended vaccines, right?
Yeah.
But
As I did. Yeah, we all did.
as you did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you get? Do you remember?
Everything that I mean, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, uh, gosh, they've added so many more since I got them. So,
That's the key point.
yeah, when I entered dental school, we had to get the Hep B vaccine
Yeah.
and get our titer checked and get the TB titer check to
Yeah.
see if we, from the TB vaccine. Pertussis, gosh, I need to I need to make
Yeah.
notes on that. But yeah,
I
eh,
actually saw my baby book a few years ago, and my mother had written in in my baby book, she'd written down the vaccines that I had received. And I have, I think I got 6 or 7 in the 80s. And my older 2 children, my oldest child's born in 2007. She's had about, I think she's at 16 or 17 total. My older 2 girls, and now my younger 2 children. We all know what happened during the pandemic, right? The
right.
pandemic happened, and the veil was lifted, right? We got to see behind the magician's curtain, so to speak. We understood that there was most people today, um, not most, I would say, in where I live in Canada, there's probably 50% of people now they're quite scared of vaccines at some level. But as I was mentioning earlier, I used to be um, I used to be pro-vaccine. So it took me it took all of us the COVID pandemic to realize that maybe these are not the best things. So now my 2 younger children, they got their uh, when they're born, they got that vitamin K. And I remember asking the
Yeah.
hospital, do they need this? But now less. Now I'm on a full stop. I tell my kids, do not put any more needles into your arm at all.
Yeah.
That's
Good.
that's where I've gone with it. But I think, but the point I was making about these vaccines is, so I like to train at the high school track, and I train there in the day quite a bit lately. So I was there the other day, and I kept hearing over the PA system, grade 10s come go to the health office for your immunizations, right? And I heard that 3 or 4 times throughout the time at the track. So I actually went into the office and I said, "Hey, I just wanted to make sure that my kids not there's no needles happening to my kids. Like, is there a paper?" And the secretary said, "Oh, we don't give vaccines." I said, "I what do you're calling over the PA system for immunizations?" And we had this like kind of this strange standoff because she just refused to acknowledge that they were being called out over the PA system, right? So there's something weird going on in the schools. And I'm going to tell you another thing. There's something very weird going on in the schools because I can see vaccine injuries in a certain amount of the kids. It's like they get this autism. You can see it now. It's like, I don't care what the scientists say. It's like, I can see it with my own eyes, right? You can see these like movement dysfunctions. And in the severe cases, these kids will have like an assistant with them all day long. And when I'm out on the track, they'll be walking some of these kids around. And, it's a common case of symptoms they have, right? Like there's
Right.
a pallor to their skin, there's a laxity to their muscles, and then they're on the autism spectrum at some point. And it just looks like a heavy metal problem to me.
Yeah, the thing that gets really confusing is it sugar? Is it a drug they're taking? Is it a pharmaceutical? Is it a vaccine? Um is
Yeah,
it, you know, looking at a device with, you know, um
yeah.
all day, or, there's so many things.
So many layers.
Eh,
That's the
uh,
thing. That's the point you're making. Yes.
How do you
So
got to
many.
unstack all of them, all of
Yeah.
them.
How do
Yeah.
you peel back those layers? Like, we see this health crisis in our work with Parkinson's disease. You've felt it. So we
Yeah.
see what long-term system degradation from poisons does to the inflammation systems in the body, right?
Right.
Inflammation in some components, that's a healthy response from the body. But when it's a chronic poison inflammation that stacks up into your cells, stacks up over time, it can be a real riddle to unpack. And I just look at the kids today who are in high school, and like, you know, is it is it 1/3 look quite physically destructed in their youth already? Yeah, I would say it's conservatively a third, generously it's 50%. Like the physiques, when I look at class photos of my classes from the 80s, those
Oh yeah.
class photos look a lot different than my kids' class photos today. The kids look different,
Very different. Very
very
different.
different. So I feel like we have an inflammation time bomb that's going to exponentially keep blowing up as we move into the future here.
Well, when the majority of people are sick, that's what people think you're supposed to be like.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they don't know the they don't know the difference anymore. And us old
That's,
geezers kind of know. I mean, we can see it because we know what it was like 40 years ago. And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's a scary thought.
yeah,
That's a scary thought. But then again, it kind of lends itself to our earlier conversations where we talked about all these different poison mechanisms, from the vaccines to the heavy metals to the pesticides to the poison foods to the pharmaceuticals. It's like the instinct is to add another supplement to fix the problem.
yeah.
That's most people's instinct. It's like they want to add another foreign poison compound to fix a problem, not
Same with
realize. Yeah.
same with pharmaceuticals too. To
Yeah.
counteract a side effect from one pharmaceutical, you take another pharmaceutical. Same
Yeah.
thing. Same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like, like, man, I'm on a lot of calls these days. Daily I'm on calls with people. And when you see in the household what a husband and wife with one sick spouse and the other spouse is not young and what they're going through, it's like, um how to describe the emotion that that provokes. It's sad, it's scary, and it's frustrating because it takes me back to that semi-glutide commercial, right? We're watching a hockey game, everybody's happy in the house, we see that commercial, and we what we don't see is the years of pain that people are dealing with as they hold on to their life, and they're dealing with full system atrophy. So they've got breathing problems, urine problems, stool problems, movement problems, skin problems, allergy problems. Like I saw a couple of videos on X of a mother with, they're trying to normalize the autism, right? Well, it's a spectrum, it happens to everybody. But then a few of the mothers put up some videos of what their house looks like as their 17-year-old son is assaulting them, who has autism, and there's simply no resources to fix that problem. So it's like, it's kind of very innocuous. Like we're watching that commercial, and we're really not seeing what the true pain that results in. And it kind of goes back to that, 80% of the world's pharmaceuticals are sold to 4% of the world's population, right? So a lot of
Yeah.
people are getting rich off of a lot of pain. That's what it boils down to. Scary stuff, scary stuff. But it wanted to segue that, Steve, because something I really respect about you, you're one of the only dudes I know who's gone. You were a dentist. You worked, you were in fluoride. You were, as a dentist, you went through the universities. I'm kind of a guy who's been on the fringes of society my whole life, where you were right in the thick of it. You're a successful guy, but you were on a host of pharmaceuticals, as we have talked about before. But you're a rare guy who's got off of everything and has gotten himself to baseline for periods. So I think
Yeah.
I think that's something that we would want to talk about. What motivated you to try to demedicate yourself?
Uh, I think as upbringing, in the back of my head, my mother was a holistic nurse, and so the concept, the concept of taking something that wasn't natural, was always
Frowned upon.
repulsed me, frowned upon. Yeah,
Yeah,
even though we did. I mean, she's the very one who gave me Cheerios. So I mean,
yeah,
but we didn't know what we know now. And when you
yeah,
know what you know now, your eyes are open and you can't go back. And so when I was t I was taking a lot of things, and
yeah,
especially when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's,
yeah,
I just it hurt so bad. I wanted to get rid of all the symptoms, and I
yeah,
could not think I mean, I had so much going on that I could not think through trying to cure the Parkinson's or fix the Parkinson's naturally.
yeah,
It just when you're at a certain point, you can't do that. Your mind will not allow you to. You'll take any drug,
yeah,
anything to alleviate symptoms, and
yeah,
what that does, it's just like throwing on a Band-Aid to a wound that won't heal. I mean,
yeah,
it covers it up, and it may work for a little bit, but it's essentially you're not going to get better. I mean, you're just not. Drugs aren't made to heal an illness, really. They're made to um, mask symptoms. And
yeah,
so, in masking symptoms, your body, learns how to, I mean, it's still sick. So the body can't keep going on, um, the receptors that recept the drugs change and your
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
changes. And so you got to fix the changes that have occurred in your body as well, as what the drugs have done. So I just, I did it pretty systematically. The first one, I, before I was ever sick, I toyed around with blood pressure medicine
Yeah.
because it had some side effects I didn't like, and so, um, but I wasn't successful because I was doing everything else wrong. You know, you have to
Yeah.
get your ducks in a row to get off of some of these things, or my blood pressure never really went down when I
Yeah.
even I thought exercise would cure it. Of course, exercise is great. I'm not knocking exercise, but you can't poison your body and expect exercise to get you out of the hole,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that
Hard to exercise when you're sick.
it is, and exercise doesn't work. I mean, it works, but it doesn't work enough to get off of some of the like the lifestyle drugs, like stuff for diabetes, stuff for blood
Yeah.
pressure. Yeah. I mean, you've got to do more. You got to do more. You got to get other things out of your body. You've got to do some of the things that primal man would have done.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
and you got to take it slow.
Yeah.
What did you say? How many cells do we have in our body? 37 million?
37 trillion cells in our
Trillion,
body across
trillion.
200 different categories. Maybe there's actually more
Yeah.
if you include the subcategories. And I think like I'm trying to come up with there's a concept that needs to be taught to people. And it stems from those internal cellular clocks because the clock on your wall, it's a clock too. And every
Yeah.
time the second hand moves 1 second, that clock's a different clock. It's
Yeah.
not going to last forever on your wall. And your cells are a bit like that, right? If you have a
Right.
clock on your wall for 10 or 20 years, the batteries are going to run out sometimes. You got to plug it in. Sometimes the gears are going to stop working. That every time that cell, that second hand moves, the clock is changed, right? And our cells are a lot like that. So this idea that we can so drugs, I can see why the idea of drugs is a good one. Okay, let's adjust something in the body.
Yeah.
But it always comes down to the dosing. That's the hard part. Drugs are easy, dosing is hard. You know this with alcoholics, right? Like there's not too many alcoholics out there who can get drunk off one beer. If they're an alcoholic now, they might need an entire bottle of vodka to get the job done because their body has adjusted to what they're putting in it. Our body adjusts, changes to every single thing we put in it. And that
Yeah.
happens at a cellular level, and it happens with the clocks in the cell because they absorb and they release. So I think if people could understand really that that you can never perfectly dose a drug forever. It's impossible. Not a supplement, not a
Right.
drug, not even a carbohydrate, actually.
Especially, and you can experiment with if you're not eating carbs and you're away from sugar, all it takes is one incident of sugar and your mind chemistry changes, your
Yeah.
thoughts change,
Yeah.
you want more, you become ravenous. I mean, it's like instantly, and that's just one thing that we consider pretty harmless.
Pretty hard. Yes.
Yeah, and that's just one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Certainly we have an abundance problem.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating stuff and it's scary stuff. And like even for me, like clients will ask me, should I take this? And I've wrestled with what is the right answer to that because
yeah,
ultimately they need to make the decision to take something. They need to become responsible for their dosing. So it's something that to empower people with the knowledge that your body is going to heal the fastest from baseline. That's a principle that there's a Parkinson's conference coming up in my hometown, and I'm going to go to it. And I've been trying to think about my communication strategies here because I'm going to be dealing with neurologists, and I've
Yeah.
been researching some of these neurologists and seeing all the work they do. And the one, he's a leading neurologist in a town close to mine, and he's got an arm's length of clinical studies and reviews, but he's got not one thing on anything that will truly heal the body, right? There's no talk of any baseline periods, no talk of nutrition, no talk of exercise. And so they're missing the fundamental true philosophies on how to heal the body. And that's actually kind of an alarming thing, because if you think about a neurologist, like, okay, you know, they've got probably $100,000 or more invested into their career. I'm sure when he goes to his neighborhood barbecues, he's one of the most respected people there. Oh, look, Dr. Dave, the neurologist, is coming to the barbecue. You know, you're a neurologist. That's incredible, right? But when you actually dig into the work that he's producing every day, the reality and the truth of it is he should be absolutely fucking embarrassed, right? It's useless. It's useless. I look at the studies that they're doing, and you know, they're doing radio wave studies in a symptom that happens at nighttime. It's like you're missing the entire plot. And that's not happening with one person. That's an entire industry. And it's alarming, because all of their productive work is for nothing. It's not doing a damn thing. It's exacerbating the problem. And well, I think I'm going to have to think long and hard about the communication strategy I use when I start speaking with these neurologists, because I've spoken with a few online and it hasn't gone well. But I'm a practical person, and when I grew up, if I did a job, if my dad made me do a job on the farm and I didn't do the job that I was trying to do, he would say, well, you just wasted all of your time, right? So when I look at the current medical industry and what they're doing, it's like, do they understand how much time they're wasting? It's like, if you're looking at, I see this stuff all over Facebook. It's like, a medical manufacturer will come out with a new gimmick, and they'll get huge amounts of funding. They'll recruit doctors and neurologists into it to be a proponent of it. And if you just look at it, it's like it will do nothing. It will do nothing. There's no magic pill to this. To heal, you need to get to the fundamental layers of your body to do that, right? You need to really radically simplify things to have effective healing. And it's I can, you know, personally, when I think about these things on a macro system level, it can stress me out.
Yeah. I think one thing the whole medical community has gotten confused is the difference between healing a disease and healing symptoms.
Yeah.
And there are two completely different things. You can make somebody feel completely well and they still have the disease, you know, and
Yeah.
so it doesn't go away. And so unless you address the disease and curing the disease, um, it does like your dad said, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Steve. Like, I was on a call with a client today, and towards the end of the call, I was unable to understand her. So you know, and like, I said, oh, sorry, I couldn't understand you. Can you please repeat that? And what ended up happening was her medication was wearing off and it was
Yeah.
slowing her down. And so you can see how hooked, and I think a lot of the people, I think it needs to be said, um, if somebody, I think if you took 10 people on really any drug, whether it would be carbidopa, levodopa, a semaglutide, a statin, like my whole family's on statins, right? They don't want to hear about the connection to
Yeah.
dementia. Don't talk about that. But if you ask them, are you addicted to statins? They would look at you like, are you crazy? It's like
Yeah.
it'd be like asking me when I ate my vitamin C when I was 10 years, are you addicted to vitamin C? So the concept of addiction, and it's especially true with the carbidopa, levodopa drugs. I think a lot of people are taking them, but the idea that they're addicted to them hasn't come into the equation. And if you're, it's, you know, I think it's a tough conversation, but
It is
because
tough.
to get off of them successfully, I think it helps to realize, oh, okay, I have become addicted to them. And the why doesn't matter so much as I'm addicted. Am I addicted mentally? Am I addicted physically? How deeply sunk into my system is that addiction? And I had one client, I said, you're addicted to these medications, right? And he said, no, I'm not. But because the word addiction is so comes with so much stigma, but also to get off of a drug, it's helpful to understand, like most people would be able to agree if they're coffee drinkers that they're addicted to coffee, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
once you can recognize that every human being on the face of the planet carries addiction in them to some degree. It's the
Yeah.
person who is addicted to nothing are few and far between, right?
Yeah.
And addiction is a good thing to understand. It can actually help you get off of something because you can start to parse apart all of the differences in your system that addiction carries, right?
Yeah.
So tough stuff, boy. Tough.
And people try to make addiction a mental thing, but it's actually just as much a physical. Well, your mind is part of your body as well. I mean, it's not something separate, but people there is a stigma that it's a willpower thing. It's I don't have the will, but chemically your body is what's addicted.
Yeah.
It's not just your mind and just your thoughts and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, it's like I was actually my so I've been treating people with psilocybin. I live in Canada. It's legal.
Lucky you.
And well, it's so today my son saw a psilocybin chocolate bar in my car, right? And he said, "What's this?" Right? And I said, "That's it's a chocolate medicine. It's psilocybin." And he wanted to know what it was, so I explained it to him. And it was an interesting conversation because it's a plant compound. And he said, "Well, what does it do?" And I explained it like this. I said, you know, often when people get into their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they have accumulated trauma to some degree, whether it's addiction or, you know, sexual abuse, physical abuse, bankruptcy, you know, trauma is so if we go through hard bad events, our brain is just a memory machine. It remembers what we did yesterday and it generally wants to do the same thing tomorrow if it made it feel good. That's true for coffee, that's true for exercise, that's true for crack cocaine. The brain doesn't really judge it from a stigma level on a chemical level. It
Yeah.
asks for it again. If you put something in the body that made it feel good, it's going to ask you to do it again tomorrow. And those things can stack up in our system as trauma. And trauma is like muscle memory. It's trauma muscle memory that we have to break apart and fragment. And when we get some alleviation on that trauma, then we can start to feel good again. So the psilocybin, it's thank God. I think to myself, especially for people who are coming off of the carbidopa levodopa, I think to myself, thank God that that exists, because for example, one client that, and this is, he's a very conservative older gentleman, and this is not, he might have had a few glasses of wine his night. He's never done drugs. He was very hesitant to take it. And even when he takes it, there's an initial 2-hour period where it's actually, you're feeling extra trauma, because the psilocybin does is it kind of magnifies everything that's happening in your system along a spectrum. So at the beginning of the effects from psilocybin, you can feel a little bit of nausea, you can feel fear. It's gonna magnify some of the negative components in what you're dealing with. And then typically what happens if you do it right, the day after, we see quite exciting symptom recovery. And with some, I always recommend it after people have achieved baseline, and after people have fixed their metabolism, and after they have recovered their muscle movement components. So if they're far enough along in their healing journey, there's that last little to get something over the hump. And with this gentleman, he had been on a plateau for a while. And the day after I saw him after the psilocybin, he said, well, he goes, I got to be honest. He goes, that shit works really well.
Yeah.
And
there's studies out now, and which is really nice. I mean, I know it's not legal in the United States, but it's showing some really promising, and I don't want it. I want it to be a nice thing, but you can pharmaceuticalize even psilocybin,
yeah.
And so
how you take it, how you dose it so how you take psilocybin is uniquely done in comparison to supplements, pharmaceuticals and stuff, because you actually have to take it along a journey. So it's like, I tell people it's a 4 to 6 hour journey in a body that's in autophagy, and you want to have a clean system when you take it. But an interesting thing that I saw with it, so one of the symptoms is my client, in his symptom arm, he had a really hard time locking his elbow out. It was like the muscle memory could just never get quite through. So we built his system strong, his muscles are strong, but had quite a hard time remembering to lock out that elbow. So every time we're doing an exercise, it's like that elbow just not quite locking out. And it would happen so frequently that sometimes I would have to let him go on it, because I'm like, I'm not going to remind him to lock his elbow out 30 times in a training session, right?
I can relate to that.
You can relate.
Yeah, it's a Parkinson's thing. When I'm doing my elbow planks and trying to put my arm forward, it doesn't go there, and it just won't go there.
Yeah. So that's a lost memory muscle, and that's the signal's not getting through. And so the day after that would have been his third psilocybin treatment. And the day after his third psilocybin treatment, we did a workout that required a heck of a lot of arm lockout. And I actually get the shivers thinking about it right now, because I have been staring at that elbow for a year. And what I saw that elbow doing today, it has never done before. So it's I've heard Parkinson's disease described as not a chemical problem, but an electrical problem. And I don't, I can't really speak to the accuracy or the truth of that statement, but after what I saw today, it's something, it changed something, and it changed it on a quite a detailed level in the body, and it was able to change it across like in quite a specific dramatic way. It was like a lost movement that we've spent a year trying to recover suddenly came
instantly.
back.
Yeah, and I've noticed that with the cleaner I've gotten as far as and into autophagy and days of fasting at the end of a long fast, there's certain things about my tremors or about my body that I feel like I had been lost a long time that I just all of a sudden get back.
Yeah.
And it's not like a weak muscle that say you've been in a cast for
Yeah.
6 months that takes time to come back. It's like an instant return.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
Yeah. That's
it's
so
really weird.
fascinating.
It is. It's really
That
strange.
is
It's really strange.
fascinating.
But
Wow.
you know, I'm a work in progress. I know things take a long time, and so um, it's the little things that bring joy, things like that. And
Yeah.
you know you're doing something, and your hope, and you got to have the mindset that eventually it's all going to come together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are people out there that are naysayers and say, you know, you're wasting your time. You're not doing, you know, you're full of crap about what you think,
Yeah.
and you know. But I know what's going on, and I see the changes. Those that are close to me and are around me all the time see the changes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you don't even have to convince them that you're doing the right thing. You know.
Well, like I think I've mentioned this before. Like I don't have Parkinson's disease, but in in 2017, 18, 19, I was at the lowest point in my life. And when I decided to try to fix myself, you know, I didn't know, I didn't have any I had a goal to change what was going on inside of my brain and body. I had a goal to change my circumstances. And I dove so deeply into primal strategies to heal that now that 5 years later, I can look back on it and say, oh, okay, I changed all my muscle memory. I changed all of my patterns. And I did that through periods of baseline. It was the periods of baseline living while in autophagy, while living super clean, while performing circadian rhythm exercises in nature that allowed my body to recomposition itself. So it's it's uh, it's a strategy of health that I like to talk about because I felt it and know it to be true, and it doesn't exist in the modern health landscape today. That philosophy of a 4-year recomposition strategy, but and we'll probably close it up on this. I'm listening to a book right now called The Revenant, and that's that. It's the
Is that
the book
I
by
saw the movie.
the
Is
movie
it?
by Leonardo DiCaprio, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Is it
Okay.
the same? The book and the movie the same?
Yes, but
Well, then I'm going to go out and read the book
the
because
book is
I'll.
10 times better. And
Yeah,
so he gets attacked by a bear.
yeah.
And
Torn up.
like okay, so his throat, his esophagus was exposed, his face was ripped off, and he was left to die in the woods. And he crawled out of the woods, and he was in autophagy because he was starving for portions of it. And while he was starving, he found an old bison carcass, and he smashed out the marrow and ate like dried rotten marrow that had probably been sitting, like I'm talking really fermented product, right?
You're going to go
And
try to reproduce that, Lars. I know you.
sure enough, yeah, you're right, I am. It's
Don't do the bear part though.
no,
Don't do
no,
the
I'm
bear
not
part.
going to do.
Yeah,
I'm not going to get
yeah.
attacked by a bear. But I love these historical books because you know you realize how much healing is in nature. Like, for example, this guy, he got bit, he got attacked by a bear, he got bit by a rattlesnake, and he got bit by a wolf. And he had to crawl. He had to crawl uh, on a broken body, but through that journey, the things he found in nature healed him.
Yeah.
And this is not an isolated story. I've run into this in many different historical novels now. And I'm not telling anybody to go crawl 100 miles to heal, but if you, the body loves to be at baseline. It loves to be in famine, right? And when it's in
Yeah.
famine, it's going to do everything it can to give you every possible chance you have to get strong again. I'm not even going to say the word survive, because it doesn't think like that. It only thinks strategically. Our system thinks strategically in conjunction with the environment, and it's going to give you every chance to survive. And when you come across every struggle that we go through, also has a benefit if it's rooted in primal first principles. And like what we do with the Carnivore Academy and what we do with Genesis Health, we're just groups of people trying to elicit primal first principle healing using some of the ancient stories. And you got to try it to believe it, but if you try it, you're going to
Yeah.
love it.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good chat. Now, thank you for joining us. And the next episode that we're going to kick out is going to be on the exercise matrix. So we're going to unpack the exercise matrix, and I'm going to give a little bit of a preview to what we're going to talk about. And that's going to set us up. So if you're listening to this podcast, I want you to like, and I want you to follow it, and I want you to put it in the notifications. And we are here to solve some of the most serious health problems that are affecting people today. And we are here to solve them truly. And that's a revolutionary statement today. And I'm gonna leave you with a little anecdotal, something funny. I was on a call today, and the nice lady, she said, I'm going to physio many times a week. And I said to her, are your muscles ever sore from physio? And she said, no. And I said, the physio is wasting your time. You need hypertrophy to change your muscles. That's it. So that's what we're going to dive into in next week's episode. Join us, and we'll do a deep dive into modern exercise systems and why they are leaving people weaker, not stronger. Thank you. And
I'm so looking forward to that, Lars.
that'll be
That's
a
yeah.
good one.
I love exercise, and
Yes, sir.
I love to do it right. So
Yeah, you're a
I'm
heck of an
looking forward to it.
exerciser, and we can see that in your physique. All right,
All right.
We'll stop the recording now. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.